Hello, I am so excited to be here with you today. Again, my name is Kayla White. I am the Adirondack Mountain Club Stewardship Manager. Today, I'm going to talk about recreational impacts in alpine stewardship in the age of COVID-19 and a focus on the Adirondack High Peaks Summit Stewardship Program and the impacts that we're seeing. So I do like to give a definition of what exactly we're protecting, what we're talking about, and that's the Alpine Zone. So the Alpine Zone is the place above tree line where specially adapted alpine plants grow. Here in New York State, we have 173 acres of alpine habitat spread across 21 summits. And we have 27 rare, threatened, and endangered species. I do want to mention the glacial history of the area, how the plants got there in the first place. So during the last ice age, during the Pleistocene epoch, all of the Northeast were covered with glaciers. And then slowly over time, about 12,000 years ago, those glaciers started to recede and melt. And the first thing to recolonize in that landscape was alpine plants. And so all of the Northeast looked like this, looked like our alpine summits that we see today. But what happened back then, slowly over time, the trees started to recolonize, move back north from the south and move up the mountains, recolonize, but where the trees couldn't grow are the summits. And that's why these alpine plants remain here today. It's like a natural living history museum up there. And while these plants are adapted to the harsh mountain weather, they are not adapted to us being up there, stepping all over them. So they really are not good with human trampling. And so this is what it looked like on Mount Colden during the 1960s, is specifically this picture, but during the 60s, there was a big hiker boom, a lot of people getting out recreating, and a lot of impacts were occurring, especially on our alpine summits. Sound familiar? There have been big hiker booms in the past, and really it took the work of a gentleman by the name of Ed Kethledge. He started a revegetation program, but really figured out pretty quickly that we needed summit stewards up on the peaks to educate people about the importance of protecting the alpine ecosystem. And that is where the Adirondack High Peaks Summit Stewardship Program comes in. So it began in 1989. It is a partnership, so it's not just the Adirondack Mountain Club, but it's also a partnership of the Adirondack chapter of the Nature Conservancy and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And it started in 1989, so all three partners came together to protect the alpine ecosystem. And our mission is to protect New York's alpine habitat through education, trail maintenance, and research. So I do want to look at the program through the scope of last year through 2020, how COVID impacted our program and the mountains, and kind of go over it through using our mission. So first and foremost is education. Summit stewards are up there to educate hikers, really enlist their help in protecting the alpine ecosystem. So we ask all of the hikers to stay on bare rock surfaces, stay off of everything green up there. So the grasses, mosses, shrubs, all those alpine plants, and also expose gravel and soil. So those damaged areas can regrow, can revegetate if we just stay off of them. We are on Mount Marcy in Algonquin during the summer every single day. We do Ray Peak 5 days a week, Cascade on the weekends, and we visit Colden every other week. And COVID had an impact. So last year, 2020, we had a reduction in staff. So instead of having 5 summit stewards and then the stewardship manager, which is myself, we only had 3 summit stewards. we also had to implement a bunch of safety protocols, and I'll go into that a little bit later, and also changed what mountains we were on. So we were on Marcy, Algonquin, right, and Colden pretty normally, a little bit of reduction on Wright. But the big change was, instead of going to Cascade on the weekends, we would go midweek. Just because Cascade, we see a lot of visitors. That's where we see most of our visitors. And so to protect Summit Stewards from COVID-19, we decided just to go midweek when it was a little less busy, a little less crazy, and really easier for us to social distance. And so we educate every single person who comes up. And because of all of those challenges that we had because of COVID, we did see a decline in the number of people we were able to educate in 2020. So we only spoke to 28,605 hikers. And since the program started, we've spoken to over 500,000. But really, that doesn't mean that visitor use hasn't increased. This graph here shows the average number of hikers per day for Marcy and Algonquin in July and August since the program started. Really, this is the closest apples to apples comparison that we have to look at that increase in the number of visitors, while partially negating things like changes in staffing and volunteer numbers that have fluctuated over the years. And so here you can see there was a drop between 2019 and 2020 for Algonquin. It went from an average of 99 people today per day to 87, while the average for Marcy actually increased from 109 to 111. And remember, this is all with the border, the Canadian border being closed, and we were still seeing these high numbers. You can notice that we've been slowly increasing, and really, maybe I shouldn't say slowly, exponentially increasing, especially in the last decade. We've seen this really big increase in the number of visitors, and these numbers do kind of reflect the trends that we see at Trailhead, for Trailhead data for the High Peaks Wilderness. And really why we think we've seen this fluctuation with Marcy and Algonquin really has to do with a few different things. First, we did think the Canadian border was playing a little bit into that. A lot of Canadians like to go and hike Algonquin. That's an easier day hike to do if you're just coming down for the day. And so that's why we think that there was that decrease. And with that increase in Marcy is because we saw a lot of novice hikers, a lot of people getting out because of COVID. And I'll go into that a little bit more later, but that's why we thought we saw that increase for Marcy, because people, novice hikers, they're new to it. They want to hike the tallest mountain. They want to go to the top. And that's why we saw that. And I do want to note that this increase in visitation to public lands, it's not unique. It's not unique to the Adirondack Park. It's not unique to the Northeast or even across the country. You're seeing this spike in visitation to public lands. It's a really great opportunity to educate hikers and enlist their help in falling in love with this beautiful place and wanting to protect it. So the next goal of our program is trail maintenance. So our project list, it did spill in from 2019 to 2020. We got thankfully we continued to get funding even despite COVID. So special thanks go out to all of our sponsors and donators. But for some specific projects that we continued from 2019 to 2020 is we did some work building cairns on Haystack. So, and we did that with ADK's professional trail crew. And that was paid help funded by the Waterman Fund and the Adirondack 46ers. So we were able to redo all of the cairns on Haystack, and really, and so we've been pretty lucky to be able to do some of these bigger projects, even though COVID has impacted the number of staff that we've been able to have last year. So I will say that every year Summit Stewards do a couple thousand feet of scree wall repair. We brush in around 3,000 feet of herd paths. We pack rocks into exposed soil. That is a few hundred square feet of rock packing that we do to prevent soil erosion. And we take off over 1,000 rocks that hikers like to place on cairns, and therefore have to rebuild about 20 to 40 cairns in a season. So the third goal of the program is research. So we do lots of different research, from alpine pollinator surveys to surveying high elevation bird species, and those are all things that we did last year. But we also have a lot of long-term monitoring, whether either we're a part of or that we are doing. So we're part of the Appalachian Mountain Club's Mountain Watch, and they've kind of transitioned also to a citizen science component, which is through iNaturalist, and it's called the Northeast Alpine Flower Watch. That looks at the phenology of alpine plants to see how their bloom and fruiting cycles are changing in response to climate change. And these are 4 species of alpine plants that we are monitoring. We're monitoring their phenology. A couple other kind of long-term monitoring that we're doing that not necessarily fit into last year, but is really important that we keep on doing, that I do want to mention. This is our alpine population study. We do that with New York Natural Heritage Program. They're a partner with us on this project. We collected baseline data in 2006, and really it was to look at the rare, threatened, and endangered alpine species that we have on our summits. We wanted to look and estimate population densities and estimate population sizes, and that's really to look and see how the landscape up on our summits, how the alpine plant communities are changing, also in response to climate change. So, we did our first round of sampling in 2006. What botany stewards have to do is they have to go to remote parts of the mountain. They lay down a 5 by 5 meter plot using string, and you can see that in this picture. And then they count stems, clumps, and estimate square meters of plants. And so we resampled in 2013, and we just resampled in 2018 and 2019. And so we just did an analysis. A paper is coming out on it, which is really exciting, written by Tim Howard from New York Natural Heritage Program. It's coming out in the Northeastern, that was the Northeastern Naturalist. Sorry, I just wanted to double check and make sure that was correct. Yes, Northeastern Naturalist, really great. And we look at 10 of the most common rare alpine species in that paper. And what was really exciting is that all of the population, so all of those 10 species, so they either increased or stayed the same in population, which was super exciting, all except 2. So 2 did see a slight decrease in population. So that makes us pretty hopeful that even despite climate change, these Arctic tundra species are holding their own up there. So another long-term monitoring project that we have implemented is the Photopoint monitoring project. So in 1999, we had a Summit Steward establish a photographic monitoring system. And really that was to document human trampling impacts because of increasing visitor use, like the historical photo I showed you previously. So we took historical photographs from the 1960s to the 1990s that some steward was able to find those locations and set up GPS points and put a nail into the rock, and then we would retake those photographs. We'd set up the camera exactly and retake them. And we can do that pretty much every 5 years. And so really, this is great for looking at helping us understand the effectiveness of having a summit steward educator presence up on the peaks, and to see if management actions are needed, and really change those management actions as a result of revegetation. So we did our first analysis in 2009. We discovered that areas with high visitation and a regular steward presence have shown signs of recovery. Those peaks have shown signs of recovery. And since that time, we have really since 2009, we've seen our contact numbers double. So we did a new analysis in 2015, and it was really exciting. We saw no statistically significant difference in change since 2009 in the vegetation, really, but that just means that summit stewards are holding the line with this recovery that we have seen in the past. So actually 2021, we are going to expand our program. We're going to put in new photo points and look at newly damaged areas. And because currently we only have 59 photo points on 9 summits. So we want to make it a little bit more representative of the Alpine Zone as a whole. So what does that mean? Like, what does all of that mean? And so I wanted to show you here some Photopoint pictures. The top 2 pictures are from the summit of Algonquin. The guy in the short shorts is reseeding, doing catches reseeding back in 1971. And then you can see what it looks like today in 2015. And then the bottom 2 pictures are Mount Marcy, the summit of Mount Marcy. So there is a string fence in that area. And so that is one management action, is to prevent people from walking there. And you can see from 1981, camping was legal at that time, but not anymore. So that also helped. And you can see that picture 2015, how good it looks today. So COVID-19, it hit 2020. We questioned whether we should even be in the field, right? Or have a stewarding season. But, after evaluating the risks and developing risk management protocols, we chose to still operate because we knew we could do it safely. We felt like we could minimize risk. We're in that outdoor setting, so that really helps. So our safety protocols included separate housing. We had cleaning schedules for our stewards. They did social distancing, and they wore masks on summits, trailheads, and while passing other hikers. We got the message out that hikers should be bringing masks with them and wearing them at crowded locations like summits to protect our stewards. Summit stewards also have first aid kits, and we put N95 masks in there, hand sanitizer, gloves, all that good stuff, extra stuff. Gear was not shared between the stewards, so they were, hiking up with their own gear. We shifted with Cascade, and stewards would also position themselves differently on the summit. So a lot of times they would approach people when they first arrived while they were wearing a mask. We also refused to touch anything from other hikers. So a lot of times we love to take pictures for hikers, but we decided not to touch anything. So not only did summit stewards have to implement these new risk management strategies due to COVID-19, but we also did see that increase in novice hikers. So, people trying to get out and safely recreate due to the pandemic. And unfortunately, this did result in an increase in recreational impacts, which included things like illegal camping on summits, campfire impacts, human waste impacts, human wildlife conflicts, vegetation damage. And I do want to stress, like, this is an amazing opportunity. People getting out, we can educate them for the first time, their future stewards, and instill in them a wilderness ethic, and introduce them a lot of times for the first time to responsible recreation and leave no trace. And that's why I do want to talk briefly and really look at the recreational impacts that we saw last year and have been seeing. But again, COVID-19 kind of compounded these issues. And see it through the lens of leave no trace. So leave no trace outdoor skills and ethics is the best way to either mitigate or minimize impacts that we see in the outdoors today. So it's run by a nonprofit organization, the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics. Really, they're dedicated to protecting the outdoors by teaching and inspiring people to enjoy it responsibly. They do educational programs, and they do actually research best practices. It is applicable to all outdoor settings and all outdoor recreation activities. So I'm not going to go through like all of the principles, but I want to use leave no trace as that lens. So the first principle is plan ahead and prepare. Really, that is the most important principle, because if you follow plan ahead and prepare, all of these other principles tend to fall into place. So there's a few different things to think about with that. And I do want to talk about it in the context of preventing search and rescues. So search and rescues do have an impact on the forest preserve. So, when someone's life is in jeopardy and forest rangers are trying to save this person, resource protection kind of goes out the window. We have to focus on protecting and saving this person. And so impacts like vegetation trampling can occur, unfortunately, cutting of trees to facilitate helicopters, drops or pickups. All of these impacts can occur because of rescues. So if we can do our part to prevent these rescues, to educate hikers beforehand, that will lead to less impacts on the forest preserve. And 2020 hit record numbers with rescues. You see the graph to the right. Region 5 saw 245 rescues, and this, I should be specific, is between January 1st to October 21st. But they saw 245, and that is almost double the number of a decade ago. And Region 6 also doubled to 40. So record number of rescues last year. And again, it's because, those novice hikers, didn't know what to expect when they got here. And so kind of things to remember and keep in mind, you want to check the weather, have the proper gear, and know how to use it is really important. And one of the big reasons that people are calling DEC for help is they don't have a proper light source. So their hike runs a little bit later, and they don't have a turnaround time. So then they're like, oh, well, I have my cell phone, using their cell phone as a light source, but it dies really quickly. And so it's always important to have a headlamp, bring a flashlight, even if you think, oh, I'm just going for a quick hike for a couple hours. Always bring a light source that is not your phone. Also, another reason why people are calling rangers is that people are getting lost. And a lot of times it is because people are being separated from their party and they're not stopping at junctions. So if you're in a group of people, you want to stop at every single junction and wait till your whole party catches up to make sure that you're all going the right way. And so what happens is people aren't doing that. Someone takes the wrong turn. They don't all, everyone in their party doesn't have a map or doesn't know how to read it. And so they're off and not with their group. And then they're calling the DEC for help. And also thinking about, having proper gear, that also has to do with footwear. Because the big injury is lower leg injuries, people falling, people hurting themselves. And so that's really important too. And so another issue is so when there's lots of people, making sure that you're traveling and camping on durable surfaces. So a durable surface is a surface that can withstand or bounce back from impact. Really, the way you want to think about it is trails are durable surfaces, campsites are durable surfaces. The high peaks is a really popular high use area. We want to use trails, we want to use campsites. So unfortunately, some impacts that we saw. So the picture to the left is an illegally cut trail that we notified the state about. Please don't cut illegal trails. Use designated trails. And even if those designated trails are pretty muddy, you want to stick to the middle of the trail and not go around mud. Walk right through that mud. It's mud season right now, so I have to throw it in there. So another piece of that is hikers not staying at designated campsites and illegally camping. So these two pictures were taken from Mount Marcy, hiking up Mount Marcy. They are above 3,500 feet. And so you cannot camp above 3,500 feet unless you're at a designated site, which there's 2 of them. People, again, we saw a lot of it last year on Mount Marcy, a lot of novice hikers going to hike Marcy for the first time. This individual is unfortunately on alpine vegetation. And I do want to stress, it's not just about the tent being on alpine plants. Obviously, that is not good, but it's also that there's multiple impacts that are occurring. So it is a lot of times they're not just damaging the vegetation, but they are having a campfire because they don't know that campfires aren't allowed in the high peaks. In the central high peaks or eastern high peaks. They are leaving behind trash and human waste. They're leaving poop and toilet paper behind. So a lot of times multiple impacts are occurring because, again, they don't know. They don't know that they're not supposed to illegally camp on a summit or at higher elevation. And they don't know all of those other, that all of those actions have impacts to the land, to the resource. So with human waste, I always have to plug it. You want to either use the facility, so use outhouses or thunder boxes like we like to call them, and that's the picture to the right, making sure that in the Alpine Zone you're either packing out your human waste or you are going below tree line to dig that cat hole. To dig a cat hole, you take 70 steps off trail, dig 6 to 8 inches and bury your poop. You can either bury or pack out your toilet paper, and you always want to pack out menstruation products. We are seeing human waste on the trails. People are scared to go off trail. While this is not a new issue, we really work hard to install high elevation privies and dig those dig those holes every year, so we have good outhouses and privies for people to use. So we did see a lot of people messing with rocks. I do want to talk briefly about the difference between a cairn and a rock stack. So on the left is a cairn. It is a carefully constructed rock structure, and it is designated by the land manager really to delineate the trail. It is constructed by professionals like Summit Stewards, like the professional trail crew. And rock stacks, which is the picture to the right, are stacks of rocks that hikers like to build. Unfortunately, they cause a lot of damage, so they can misguide hikers and can be unstable, so they can pose a danger to people going off trail, danger to the resource as well. A lot of times to get these rocks, people are ripping out these rocks from the soil or the vegetation, and especially at higher elevations, that causes a lot of damage. And when you do them in streams, when you stack rocks in streams, that also causes ecological damage as well. So don't stack rocks, leave the cairn building to the professionals. And I do want to mention the feeding of wildlife. For the most part, people know for the most part to not directly feed the wildlife, intentional feeding. A lot of times it's unintentional, people leaving food behind. And I will say this past year, 2020, we did have a lot of bear incidences, negative interactions between bears and campers. And so at Lake Colden, there was a nuisance bear that was going around, ripping through people's tents, going into lean-tos even when people were there. And that was because people were improperly storing their food. They weren't using bear canisters, or they were using them incorrectly, or leaving just food in their tents and in the lean-tos, or cooking in the lean-tos. And that was drawing the bears, and that changed its behavior. And unfortunately, it had to be put down. And this is not the bear's fault. It is absolutely a preventable thing if we all do the right thing and use bear cans. And I will say that all bear cans are not created equally. So they are required in the central or eastern high peaks. And so there are bear cans that work, and there's some bear cans that do not work. So I won't focus on the ones that work, but you can see them all on the left. Some things that don't work. So there's the clear blue bear vault. That is the picture at the bottom. And then there is the orange frontiersman, and that's at the top. Those two bear canisters, unfortunately, do not work. The plastic is too thin, and the bears can chew right through it. I did also include a picture of an earth sack that is used for a bear hang. So bear hangs also do not work. In the eastern high peaks, bears can climb trees. They can get into them. So it's important to know that bear hangs aren't legal, and they don't work that well. And then I do want to just kind of wrap up and mention that we are sharing a finite resource, and everyone, a lot of people come to enjoy the outdoors for so many different reasons. And, because of COVID-19, because people have been cooped up in their houses, last year people came to seek emotional, physical, and mental well-being. They were looking to be rejuvenated from the mountains. I know that's how I get my energy from, is being out in the mountains, enjoying this beautiful place that I feel very fortunate to be able to call home. But really, it's important to remember it's up to all of us, every single one of us, to protect these wild places, to leave them better than we found them. We need all of you guys to be stewards too, to take those actions to, when you're in the Alpine Zone, do the rock walk, educate yourself on leave no trace outdoor skills and ethics. Talk to Summit stewards, talk to DEC staff, learn more, and do your part to protect these wild areas, because we can't do it alone. We can't do it without all of you. So thank you so much. I'm going to open it up for questions. Thank you.